The second person who signed up is Mr. Chris Kennedy of the Connecticut Civil Rights Council. Thank you for being here, Mr. Kennedy.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. Just to start, I went through the judicial system through a complicated divorce. I did have a great deal of difficulty, and out of that I did start a group, the Connecticut Civil Rights Council. I also run a weekly group up in Massachusetts for people going through divorce. And just in follow-up with Kathleen's statement, the one thing that I see is a constant frustration with the system. And I would just ask that when you hear the complaints, to just look to the facts or look into it beyond the frustration, because there are very valid complaints. I'm trying to use my cell phone here to keep time, but I forgot my watch. But again, I wanted to thank you. You know, at least I appreciate a task force being formed. I appreciate you listening and taking the time out to pay attention to these, and hopefully some good will come out of it. The problem that I have is that with the judicial system, there's no avenue to hold judges accountable. If a judge chooses to attack an individual or chooses to abuse his discretion, you really don't have any avenue. You do have the Judicial Review Council. Unfortunately, not too many complaints have been addressed. They are reappointed every 8 years, but I guess that's the problem. They're reappointed every 8 years. There's never any issue on reappointing them. But without getting, I guess, too aggressive, I just wanted to bring up a couple points. Judge Scheinblum was recently reappointed. Some of the issues I brought up to the Judicial Committee and the Judicial Review Council, him referring to Hispanics as El Stupido in court, or just ridiculing people, I thought was inappropriate. Using a violin to sentence people. He would play a good note, you got a good sentence. If you played a bad note, you get a bad sentence. One thing that was very disturbing was a posting outside the clerk's office. It was a party that Judge Scheinblum was sponsoring. Only attorneys were invited. He was charging them $12 a person. He was using the courthouse from 12 o'clock on to hold a party for a retirement. And I just thought that was inappropriate. I couldn't go, for one thing. But he shouldn't be using a state facility, and he shouldn't be charging attorneys directly to be paying a judge. I'm sure it was for a retirement party. I can understand the relationship, but it's just inappropriate behavior. My complaints against the judges, I did have a case in front of Judge Scheinblum. At one point, I had a transcript of the prosecutor misleading the judge, well, actually outright lying to him, and bringing up issues. A judge out of Rockville had called the prosecutor telling him to prosecute me. And I had a transcript of it, and the prosecutor denied it. Judge Scheinblum ordered the court reporter to shut off the recording device and then threatened me if I made any other allegations, he'd retaliate against me. He removed 2 of my attorneys, and for 2.5 years kept my case going without any right to trial, despite repeated motions. Judge Kaplan, I guess, is the biggest issue. I had filed a complaint against Judge Graziani. My wife was on trial for stabbing me, and he awarded her sole custody against every recommendation. And that's what really got me started with the problems in the judicial branch. Judge Kaplan, he's the administrative judge of Rockville Court. He actually contacted, well, first he issued a restraining order against me, not for abuse, but he terminated contact with my son because he didn't like my parenting rules. He brought up my Irish heritage, he brought up religion, again, parenting rules. Then he said on the record that he called the state prosecutor in Enfield, who I had a case going, and told the prosecutor not to nullify my case. The prosecutor had agreed to nullify it. And I thought that was inappropriate. He then went on to actually take, I filed a complaint against him, and he issued a second restraining order taking away my 2 daughters. The restraining order was blank. There's no allegations of abuse, no children listed, and he took away my children. I actually went into court asking, what am I being restrained from? And the answer was that the hearing will decide. And I don't think that's appropriate. He took those 2 restraining orders and actually drove them down to Hartford Court, submitted them to the state prosecutor to put into an affidavit for another arrest. This would be my 3rd arrest now by Judge Kaplan. The restraining orders were issued in error. The computer, for some reason, included the mother. It was brought before him. He recognized it, acknowledged it was an error, refused to fix it, and then he used those 2 documents to write up an affidavit for my arrest. And he used a state highway. I think that's a federal crime, not just a state crime. I mean, this is a judge who should be arrested. You cannot fabricate documents or willingly submit documents that you know are false into an affidavit for someone's arrest. And this is an administrative judge of Rockville Court. It is inappropriate. It is so far beyond the bounds of justice, and there is no recourse. I filed a complaint with the Judicial Review Council. The complaint was maybe several months after his actions. They dismissed it. They said it was outside the 1-year time limit. Well, I asked them to reconsider. They said, no, we don't reconsider them. And when I contacted them, the woman told me that she just shreds the documents. So here my complaint's being filed, and it's getting shredded. And there's just no accountability whatsoever for judges. I don't think that's appropriate. After these 3 arrests, multiple protective orders by Judge Kaplan calling prosecutors, judges, removing my attorney from a conference room so he could meet in private with a prosecutor. After all this business was over, every case was dismissed. I was acquitted, or the case charges were dismissed. My record is completely clean. I had not seen my kids in 2 years. And now I go in front of Judge Swartz up at Rockville under Judge Kaplan again. And Judge Swartz orders a 48-hour hearing. A hearing within 48 hours. I received no notice, no service of any motions filed, and she terminates all contact with my children. Any motion I file is not listened to. She'll put off a hearing for 6 months, multiple motions that I file, and she'll refuse to hear them. She'll just refuse. Doesn't matter. If I file a federal lawsuit against her with a temporary restraining order, she ignores it. She won't address it. And the complaints that I filed to the Judicial Review Council, not only are they dismissed, but she takes those complaints, seals them from the public, and puts them into my family court folder. And so I think that kind of ties in with the public being denied access. She doesn't have the right to deny the public access to my judicial complaint and yet blacklist me with every judge that's used my file. So I guess just to conclude, I wanted to make sure that I got some certain points across. I've listed several judges in here. Other issues of judges, they'll hold hearings, they'll issue the arrest warrants, they'll sign off on it, and then they'll hold the arraignment. You know, and I can read the practice book, I know it's inappropriate. But who do you turn to? I mean, do you wait 8 years to have a judge reviewed? Judge Simon was just reviewed, and he was overwhelmingly reappointed. A judge that uses violence to sentence people. It just breaks down the integrity of the judicial system. There's no more credibility or no more belief in the justice system. And it's very frustrating, especially as a father not seeing his children. I have no allegations of abuse, no allegations of being an unfit parent, but yet because of my complaints or attacks on the judicial system or on judges like Judge Kaplan, they've decided to retaliate by taking away my children. I mean, it's just outright abuse. That's not right. That's not right at all. But I guess the main issue is judicial complaints. They should be open to the public. If somebody files a judicial complaint, you should know what it is, and they should have to justify why they dismiss it, just like DCF does. They should investigate every case, and they should also appoint someone. If they're going to dismiss these cases because they're not written correctly, they should appoint someone so that you do write a complaint correctly, or someone who can tell you up front what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, instead of just blindly sending in an affidavit and they just tell you it's rejected. Accessibility doesn't really apply here, but the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, any person with a hidden disability like attention deficit disorder, they don't have true access to the courts. Many of the judges don't know what an ADA coordinator is, or they don't know how to help someone that has a disability, say a learning disability or a communication disability. And that was one of the reasons my children were taken away. But anyhow, just to tie it up, I appreciate your time. I'm sorry that we're the only 2 here. I would ask, perhaps it needs to be better. I had a hard time finding a schedule, I know, but it should be maybe publicized a little bit better. But as a person who runs these 2 groups in Massachusetts and Connecticut, I receive hundreds of complaints, personally against judges or against problems in the judicial system. I'm just very sorry that these people don't come forward and speak out. But there are hundreds of complaints of people very similar to mine where they're being retaliated against, or there's some injustice going on that's just not being accounted for. There's just zero accountability. So anyhow, thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. Does any commissioner have any questions?